Well, hey everyone. My name is Jonathan from the GitKraken team. I'm joined here by Corey McCarthy. Hey Corey,
Hey, Jonathan.
can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm a 37-year-old developer, married. I got four kids, all of them under seven, so lots of craziness going on. Been doing this for about 9 years. I'm in my third role. I actually went through and got my bachelor's in computer engineering I believe I was about 26 at the time, so a little bit later. One of my driving factors is I absolutely hate doing boring, repetitive work. Um, so anytime I have the opportunity to get something scripted and automated, that is like my number one thing to make the world a better place, or at least my workspace.
Great. Well, glad to have you. I did have a few questions here about folks who are interested in getting into software development later in their career. Maybe they decided to go with one career track and they've made the decision that, like, I want to explore learning how to code. How did you get started with software development? Before I get into that topic, I'm curious to learn what was your journey like?
Kind of weird and windy. So my dad is a computer tech. He's been doing everything from desktop support to server support, setting up networks since I was six. Uh, and he, back in the days of Windows 3.1, if you wanted to play a game, you had to go through DOS because games just didn't run in Windows. So he had me working from a command line and moving around and having to find the files and open things. And honestly, that was probably a pretty decent party trick for a 6-year-old. Most people considered. So then it was around eighth grade, I think. There was a web hosting site called Angel Fire, and I had just gone on, and it was kind of like just fill in your data in a form, and it made you a web page, and that was really cool until I got completely bored of everything that it could pre-configure, and I just started working. It was like, raw HTML editor. I was like, cool, let's do that. And I would, we're talking about mid 90s. Just go view source on a web page and just go snag tags and figure out like the properties of things. But there wasn't really like an E3 schools or Stack Overflow or anything. So I actually remember having my mom take me to the library so I could go get books on HTML and bring them home. So I started that, and then around the same time, I got one of those graphing calculators, and my buddy and I remember sitting in the back of my eighth grade pre-calculus
Right,
class.
is like one of these
Before that,
before this one?
yeah, sitting in the back of my pre-calculus or pre-algebra class rather, um, writing on the calculator TI basic, like menu-based stuff for again, monotonous stuff. I hate formulas. If I can't derive a formula or, look at a reference for it, memorizing it is not something that I am good at. Um, so I would write a program that I could pick which formula I wanted, like pick the quadratic equation and be like, okay, here's your A, here's your B, here's your C, and put in whichever thing you knew or didn't know for these different formulas, and it would spit out the thing you didn't know. Because I hated that stuff. And what's funny is I'm pretty sure that my teacher, Miss Franks, knew that we were doing this and using these calculators on the test, but she kind of figured if we made the program, then we kind of deserved it.
Nice.
Then in like high school, I was always really good with like grammar and syntax and stuff. I have a very specific memory of waking up in like 10th grade, first period English, sleeping on my desk, waking up and I think the teacher was doing like diagramming sentences, and I looked at it, and apparently nobody in the room understood what was going on other than the teacher. I didn't even hear the question. I looked at it. I figured it out. I told her what the answer was, and I went back to sleep. And she was so angry that I wasn't awake and taking part in her class, and that nobody else in the room understood what was going on. But again, dad worked on computers. I was like, hey, I should do something with computers. What about programming? And that was kind of the thing. I went back to college after dropping out for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, and started learning computer programming.
So, and now going back to kind of what I alluded to earlier, there are folks who did decided to go a different route for their career, at least at the start, and maybe have reached some sort of decision point where they're ready to like maybe explore learning how to program. Why should someone consider becoming a developer later in their career?
I remember hearing when I was joining the workforce that almost everybody's going to have 2 to 3 careers in their lifetime. Like you're going to have a hard shift and go in a new direction at some point, regardless of what happens. So many things are just abuse your body and are difficult to do as you get older. I get to sit at my desk all day. It's actually kind of a life goal. Before this, I waited tables, I worked on cars, did various things outside. It was generally kind of terrible being outside in the southern US through the summer, sweating constantly. Like, I don't have to do that. I can sit here, I can solve problems with my brain. And that's something that I think is really helpful. So I mean, one, if you're going to be transitioning into a new career, transitioning to something that's not going to abuse your body is a wonderful thing. Two, I think that if you're the kind of person that likes learning new things, maybe particularly from my experience, people that are ADHD are particularly adept at picking up programming because they can go down the rabbit hole of how does this work? How does this work? And just like get so far. But if you're the kind of person that learns different things, the more things you've learned in the past, the easier it seems to be to learn the new things. And so much of software development is learning new things. Even if you go, whether you go to college or whether you go to a boot camp or whether you teach yourself and just find a way in, um, you're always going to be learning new things. When I got into college and started learning to write code, we were on like Java, I want to say 1.4, um, which was ancient then. Now I don't know what all's out, but I know I'm actively working on like Java 16 and 17, which is, I guess, technically 1.16 and 17, but it's so far down the road. Um, the more you can learn, the farther you will go in this field. So I think the people that have more experience picking up new skills do better.
Now you touched on this your in that answer you just gave me, but I did want to just ask directly, what did you do before you started to learn software development? So it sounded like you had a few years where you were doing something else. What was that like, and what helped guide that decision to jump into development again?
So I went through fast food and oil change and auto maintenance and waiting tables. I worked in a print shop for a minute. Um, there are some people that should work in customer service and there are others that should not. I was never one of the group that should be working in customer service. I just figured out that I could make more money doing that than doing pretty much anything else. Um, and luckily, it allowed me to go to college for, I think I spent 7 years after I started going back part time.
So slightly related to that, there are folks who are, yeah, doing all sorts of different jobs. What barriers do people later in their career usually face when trying to learn programming?
I'd say that the biggest barriers for getting into programming are really just the fact of what is programming? What direction do you want to go? You can find a million different articles listing, here's the best 5 things to do this job, or the best language for back-end development, or the best framework for front-end development, or the best boot camp or whatever. Um, Picking a direction is really the hardest thing. You got front end development. Do you want to see something happen in the browser? Back end development. Do you just want logic to be happening somewhere and getting something done? Do you want to do full stack and pull all these things together? There's DevOps. Do you want to just make applications go somewhere and deploy somewhere? Do you want, to work on the automation platform that developers use to get their software out there? There's cybersecurity and so many things out there that are all being hyped up as you can learn this in 2 weeks. And no, you can't. It doesn't matter if you're going to college or boot camp or working on your own, you're going to spend roughly the same amount of time practicing your software development skills before you can do the work. It's just a matter of, do you need to pay an absurd amount of money to a college to get the structure of here's the things you need to do? Do you want to do that in an expedited manner with a boot camp? I don't know, some of them are free, but or do you want to do it on the side? There's a guy in the space named Danny Thompson that is kind of huge in tech Twitter. Uh, he was literally frying chicken in a gas station. And he decided he did not want to do that anymore. He woke up every day at 4 o'clock in the morning and wrote code until he had left for his gas station job. And then eventually he just went straight into software development. You can do it however you want. You are going to put in the same amount of time, whether you're paying somebody else to give you an education or not. So do it your own way.
Still on the topic of, trying to get into development later in life, what advice do you have for someone who's had a career outside of tech and wants to become a developer?
I tend towards back end development stuff. I know there are lots of great resources out there for front end developers. There's something called Front End Masters that I've heard wonderful things about. I believe it's a paid coursework. Um, for the best thing that I've seen for introduction to software development at all, there's a book called Automate the Boring Stuff with Python. And it breaks down, it does use Python scripting, but it walks through what are data types, how do you use them, how do you break down a problem. The first half of it is the basics of programming, and the second half of it is projects that you walk through and they say, we want to do this thing. And they show you how to break down the tasks into pieces and then address those tasks with code. And then at the end of it, there are open-ended, how would you do this? How would you make this project do this other thing? And it just kind of leaves it up to you to go figure it out, knowing that you have this piece of code that already does the first part. And it really works to help you understand how to approach a problem and solving it with code.
Well, thank you so much, Corey. Definitely appreciate having you on here. And we'll
It's been a
see
pleasure.
you. Yeah, thanks for being an ambassador. And to everyone who watched today, thanks for joining us. Take care.
Bye.